It being 6 o'clock, I call the March 2021 Town of Clayton Planning Board meeting to order. For roll call, I think we've got everyone here. Just a reminder that I have been chastised about in town, but I will ask you to speak clearly and loudly into your microphone just so we make sure that we can hear everybody. And so hopefully I don't offend you if I ask you to speak a little louder. We'll go to item number 2 on our agenda. Are there any adjustments this evening? Okay, hearing none, we can move on to item number 3, approval of the minutes. Are there any corrections needed? Hearing none, I will entertain a motion.
Motion to approve.
Okay. Motion to approve, Board Member Powers. Is there a second?
Second.
Second, Board Member Lipscomb. All those in favor say aye. 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 Those opposed say no. Motion carries. The next item on the agenda this evening is 4A. So 2021-13-VAR, the Lofts at Wild District variance. And we'll now hear from staff. I believe it's just a motion to continue.
Good evening, Chair Merritt, members of the Planning Board. Jeff Keynes, Land Use Planner. The applicant has requested another continuance to the April 2021 hearing. And at that point, we hopefully will have the full hearing for the rezone application.
Okay. Any questions for staff? Hearing none, I will entertain a motion to continue 2021-13. Oh, I think I have these mixed up. My apologies. 2020-173-RZ to be continued to the April Planning Board meeting. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Motion, Board Member Coates. Is there a second?
A second.
Second, Board Member Avery. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed say no. Motion carries. The next item on the agenda is 5A, Planning Director Update, and we'll now hear from staff.
Chairwoman Merritt, members of the commission, council, good to see you guys tonight. J.D. Solomon, Town Manager. Feels weird standing behind you. The first update I will give you is I've asked Jeffro to work on getting some plexiglass back in between the different spaces. And I don't know if we can get this whole planning board up there, but we're trying to move back to some kind of back to work schedule and everybody to be up here. So hopefully maybe sooner, May or June, we'll be able to start moving people up front. So I guess that's my first announcement to make. A couple things that I'll note. I guess my big thing is, what are we going to do now that Samantha resigned last week? Her last day was last Wednesday. And so we do have a plan for that. A couple things that I will give you. I feel like I'm talking loud. Last week, I met with former planning director for the city of Greensboro and former interim director at Durham County in Durham, a guy named Dick Hales. He's a former APA president in the state as well. Got a lot of experience. We have hired him as a part-time senior planner in the planning department. I think with that experience coupled with Jeff's experience, I think that will help us to take some of the day-to-day load off and give us another great senior resource. I plan to continue on in the planning director role, which I'm enabled to do so as a planning manager, at least until we fill the position. That may take 6 to 8 weeks. Don't know, it may take 3 months, 4 months, I don't know, but we will do our best and find the right candidate for this community. But I think until then, with my previous experience, many of you, I know James knows me and some other people, but I did serve on this planning board for about 8 years, back in the 1990s up to about 2000. I did that first comprehensive growth plan. In my practice as a consultant, I was also a planner, and so I've actually been on the planner side of this table as well as the board side of this equation. I was an AICP for about 12 years. Because I'm a reliability engineer and have a lot of other certifications, I just could not keep up with the AICP stuff, so that was one I dropped because my practice was kind of heading in a different direction for me. So I am a former AICP for a long period of time. And I did serve at one time as a staff augmentation and a senior planning director role for about 6 months with the town back 20 years ago. So I certainly know the planning game, I know the town, and I know the ordinances. When we did 160D in front of the council, if you guys remember, I did that workshop myself just because of where we came and what we were doing. So I think with that experience on my front and as town manager, especially with a few of the projects we have coming up, with Jeff's experience and with Dick Hell's experience, I think we'll be in good hands in the short term till we find the right planning director. Another addition that we'll be adding on a contract basis is a gentleman by the name of Ben Hitchings. Ben has his own consulting firm. He's also a former president of the North Carolina Planning Association. He was planning director at the city of Morrisville for a number of years, and he kind of knows everybody in the business. We have him coming in as a consultant to help us as a third-party set of eyes for both the pedestrian plan and the comp plan. So I thought that would be a good move in this time of transition to have another resource that we could do that. Ben is also working as part of the consulting team with the county's comp plan, which really means nothing other than he's going to Smithfield every once in a while, and it'll be convenient for him to come to Clayton. So he'll know a little bit about Johnston County anyway. So I'm excited about those things. The other thing I would say in the transition, congratulations on getting 160D passed. We got 160D through the council, and as Jeff told me earlier, basically anything coming forward will not have the dual choice. It'll start being just 160D, so that will change the world a little bit of how we look at things. Jeff will give you an update on the Board of Adjustment selection and the next thing, but we did reform the Board of Adjustment. So they will be hearing a lot of appeals from the administrative decisions, hearing all the appeals from the administrative decisions. And this board will mainly have the rezoning, the conditional uses, and the text amendments that are so important to what we do. We will also be working on a way like site plan reviews that you guys won't do anymore per the new 160D. But we're going to find another way to make sure you guys are briefed, as well as Councilman Grannis likes to hear what's going on at the council level, but make sure you guys are briefed of what the staff's working on so that we can get your opinions when needed or when you guys feel like you should weigh in on some of those things. It's terrible when you're supposed to know and people say, hey, what's that going up on the corner over there? And you have no idea. So I fully appreciate everybody's role of wanting to know what's happening, and we want to keep you to know what's happening, even though some of the processes have changed. I'm going to stop there and just let you guys ask questions about anything to do with the planning director transition or anything to do with staffing while I'm here.
Sir, any questions for Mr. Solomon?
JD, I don't want to ask a question as much as I would like to have a request.
So sorry, James. Do we know if that microphone's working?
Hello?
That's one way to regulate you.
Hello?
Call him councilman. That's how, I remember.
It's got a green light. Can you hear me?
We can hear you. You just have to speak up loud.
Hello? Hello? Hello?
Yeah.
There we go.
You got me now. Okay. What I would like to ask for is when the new planning director comes in, because I know you're going to have a lot of stress on staff until we have a new planning director come in. But I'd really like to have some comprehensive training for the planning board, because I know I've been doing this since 1994 in one fashion or another, and in my private business I do a lot of development also, so I feel like I've got an advantage on a lot of board members here, but especially now with the extra time I think we're going to have because of the Board of Adjustments duties being taken away from us. I really think that we need to train every meeting, because there's several people in here, like, I don't know, raise your hand if you had any training whatsoever since you've been a board member. You know? And I think that we all want to be involved and we all want to do a good job, but we all want to understand what we're supposed to be doing and what the regulations are. So I really hope that you'll put an emphasis on that with whoever does become the new planning director.
Yep, and I'm glad you brought it up because it's something that even Samantha and I talked about. Some members of the council have talked about it to me, but we need to do it for the Board of Adjustment. And we need to do it for y'all. We need to do it for all our boards and commissions, really, because we just don't do enough of it. And it doesn't take much, like you say, James. You could do it, have a module 30 minutes or an hour at some of the meetings, and you accomplish a lot if you just chip away at things.
Yeah, I was at Archer's Lodge a year ago for a planning board meeting, and at the end of the meeting, they did like a 30-minute training session that was through the Institute of Government.
Yep.
And it was all online. They did like a 5 minutes. They'd listen to it, and they would talk about it, and it was very structured, but it was very good. I sat and listened to it, and I learned something that night. So, you know, it doesn't have to be hard training or something that has to be created. I think that the coursework's out there. We just need it presented to us.
We need to bring it in. One of my key questions, some of the guys have been in my interview, Michael Granis has, but most of you guys probably, I see gray hair in here, you've been a manager at some point and had to look over documents and stuff. I like to ask people, how many people have had a formal course in proofreading, a formal course? And I can especially like to ask my engineers, and everybody puts their hands down and say, I've never been trained in it. But yet as managers sometimes and senior people, that's one of your number one jobs is to proofread. I just make that example because sometimes we just assume, to support what you're saying, we throw you in here, you're going to learn, but nobody's ever formally trained you to do the most basic parts of the job. So yes, we'll do that. That's good. Anybody else? Come on, there's got to be some harder questions than that. Marty, come on.
Yeah, thank you for the update, Jay. Appreciate that. Just looking at the 160D, as far as having the choice, I guess if you are already in, you have the choice. If you're in the queue,
Yes.
which way you go, and anything new will fall under the
160D.
Right.
That's right.
So, I got you.
And I think there's a window of whether even the choice comes into play. And Jeff, I believe it's about 6 months, isn't it? That they have some period of time, depending on when it first comes in and approvals. Is it longer than that?
It could be longer than that, depending on the application.
Yeah. So, but yeah, that'll be transitioning for a while. So it's going to be confusing a little bit, as you guys already know from before, about are we under the old way or the new way? But a couple months from now, that should lay down too.
Is the 160D implementation stuff, is that the major or the only reason that the adjustment board is not going to be included in what we do? And the main reason I ask that is it was only rolled into what we did a couple years ago.
Right.
It seems odd that it would be rolled in and then taken away again unless there was a specific reason.
Yeah, I'll try to answer it. The short answer to the question is yes, it was mainly driven by 160D. There was a lot of discussions about, because the town council can also serve as a board of adjustment or hear the appeals as well. And in some cases, they debated their ability to do waivers versus variances and those type of things. But at the end of the day, I think the majority of the council decided, and I support that when you go into quasi-judicial or fact-finding, it's a different mentality. It's a different mentality for the council. It's a different mentality for y'all. And so to go back to kind of the more predominant and more the old school of saying there's just one board, and when they come into business, they have to be kind of judge and juror and put their finding of fact hat on. That was kind of the way everybody thought it should go. And so that's what it's for. Whether they will meet, you know, one of the things when we took it away, I understand why I was surprised we took it away. I mean, legally, we could do it a number of different ways, and we can just, I think most have a separate board of adjustment and a planning board, but there's a few that will combine both and have the problems for the reasons we had. But there was a feeling that you didn't ever, you weren't having enough meetings. And I was active there was a time when we did have a lot of stuff. A lot of stuff came to board adjustment, but I think y'all were going through a cycle where you didn't have that much. And so there was that thought process of instead of having two boards and 2 nights of meetings, and some meetings get canceled or not meet, that we just combine it into one board. And probably procedurally, legally, that was the more dangerous course, and so we've kind of course corrected out of that. So, anyway, long answer to a very short question, but if you saw the debates, it was a very passionate debate about what we should do. So, the one thing we used to do, and I don't know how recently y'all were doing this, but it really is good for the Board of Adjustment to meet with this board occasionally too, not together, but just to get to know each other. I know we can't do it at COVID, but if the planning board's looking kind of the bigger picture and some of the zoning and the bigger things, the Board of Adjustment learns a lot by hearing what's on your mind. But they will have to, it won't be any matter of opinion with them. It'll have to be purely fact and judgment. So that's a little bit different than what y'all can do here. So, good. Okay. Okay, so I still got comprehensive, you mean to do a comprehensive plan update while I'm here?
Yes, item 5B.
So comprehensive plan update, this was something that I wanted to do anyway, but as I mentioned, I've got Ben Hitchings coming in. I believe we're trying to finalize that contract just to give us a little bit of support. We're talking to Stuart on Wednesday, but I wanted to make sure we took a breath and just made sure we had all the input we needed. You'll hear me talk about the master plan on the infrastructure a little bit later. I was concerned all the parties in-house weren't getting the full time and some of the maps too. But we're going to slow it down just a little bit, try to regroup a little bit, make sure we got the right ideas and we program the right amount of time. If we need to do some more workshops and we need to bring, and I think that may be it, is instead of manage it to a scope, which I think we're doing a good job trying to manage it to a scope, but let's manage it to an outcome, to an effect. And if it takes us a little bit more time or if it takes us a little bit more budget, this comprehensive plan is too important not to make sure everybody's been heard and gets all the technical pieces right. And I can talk about that under the master plans later. So I don't think it'll slow it down much, but it may slow it down a little bit until the summer. And then, of course, our ordinance rewrite, we'll still be doing that. So that'll be following on. We have not picked a consultant to help us with that yet, but that'll be something we'll definitely need to do. And that's one of the products of 160D. Some of the commissioners, some of the council asked, would that one and done, would it be done to the comprehensive ordinance rewrite? And the answer is no. There's still stuff that we still have to do some text changes and ordinance changes. But that'll go on later this year when we'll pick a consultant to do the whole ordinance. The pedestrian plan is just now kicking off. And so we, last week with the storms, Ben had to delay that meeting, but we'll get back on track and we'll make sure we've got that one mapped out as good as we can too. Just want to make sure in the transition that we've clearly know what we're trying to get out of the end of the pipe and we're just not managing, letting things run to a contract versus a result. So, okay, with that, I'll give it back to Jeff to talk about, unless you have some questions on the comp plan. Okay. Jeff, you want to?
Thank you, sir. The item on the agenda is 5C, Board of Adjustment Selection Update.
Good evening, Chair Merritt, members of the Planning Board. Introduce myself again for the record, Jeff Keynes, planner of Town of Clayton. So we had, as you know, we are having a Board of Adjustment forming. Last week we held interviews. It went very well. We had, I think, 8 interviews for 7 positions. But we think we found a good location for person number 8. So I think at the end of the day, it all worked out quite well. And I think hopefully everybody's happy where everything ended up. So just to give a brief overview of what the Board of Adjustment comprises of, is a 5-person board with a 2 alternate person panel. 3 people on the Board of Adjustments are within town limits and 2 of them are within the ETJ. Both the town and the ETJ will have an alternate in case one of them is not able to attend the meeting. Then we will have at least a minimum of 5 people in attendance to hear the case and to vote on it. As Mr. Solomon mentioned, there are some changes going on. I just want to kind of briefly go over who's hearing what and what's changed since the 160D. So there have been quite a number of changes since the adoption of 160D. As mentioned before, the planning board will hear the recommendations for a text amendment, a rezone, and something new would be a conditional zoning district. So instead of having planned unit developments, it's going to be what we call a conditional zoning district. We do have one application coming in, which I'll talk to at the end of the meeting, just in general terms of it. The Board of Adjustments will make decision on variances and administrative appeals. Now, to my knowledge, there have not been very many administrative appeals that have taken place within the town, and who knows if that will stay the same, or who knows if that will change. Since then, some of the applications that were once heard by the planning board, for example, site plans, are now going to be heard at an administrative level, unless there's a certain criteria, and the number slips my head, but it's a large number. So if it's a large manufacturing number, it will be heard through different ways. But for the smaller projects, say a gas station, a vet clinic, those would be now at staff level for a decision. They will be heard by the technical review committee, and a final decision will be made by the director. So that's going to be a new change. So in some of the things that will stay the same, again, if it's a site plan that's associated with a special use permit, those two applications will be carried to the town council as it has done in the past. So with that, we do hopefully have our first plan of adjustments or Board of Adjustments date set, which would be the last Wednesday of the month. So whatever the last Wednesday of April is, I think it's 28th, 27th. You're the last Monday, they're going to be the last Wednesday. And so for that one, we're going to have a variance application. You've heard it before, the lofts, which we had a variance, and you guys heard that project, I believe, in February. So that will be heard in the April Board of Adjustments hearing. And I'm going to leave it at that, because I want a little teaser for the end for upcoming projects, and I don't want you guys to leave early, because you may want to know which upcoming projects you're going to still hear, because as projects do come in under the new 160D hearing, you will still be involved with that. One note I wanted to dovetail or piggyback on with Mr. Solomon was the opportunity of permit choice. So as he mentioned, it'd be kind of crazy for the next couple months. There are some applications that have been submitted prior to 160D. The applicant does have the opportunity to pick what they call permit choice. Do they want to go under the old code, or do they want to go under the new code? And so as we're going through these processes, the applicant will let us know, I want to go under the old or the new. So you may actually hear some applications that you go, wait a minute, I thought this was going to be heard by the Board of Adjustments. Normally that would be the case, but the applicant, for whatever reason, has chosen a permit choice and wish to continue under the current pathway, under the old code, if you will, to move the project forward. So I will say probably in the next 2 months, maybe 3 months, you may have some flashbacks of prior applications. But if that's the case, then that's the case. And if not, then they'll go under the new code, in which case they may transfer hearing bodies to make the final decision. So with that, I'm going to stop and hand it back to you.
Okay, thank you so much. Any questions for staff? Right, moving right along.
Waiting for you.
Looks like 5D on the agenda is our master plan item. Is that back to Mr. Solomon? Thank you.
Rich had to coach soccer tonight, so I told him, all things being equal with informational item, I could probably handle this with him while he coaches one of his daughter's soccer teams, so no offense to that. So I think the big thing that we wanted to talk about in this one, and it goes a little bit, it does a lot with the comprehensive plan, but it's just some general awareness from a planning and project perspective for the planning board too, and that is we are strapped with respect to our capital budgets as a town. The electric fund has always been very tight with the projects they can do. I think some of you may be aware, but you don't completely, maybe not all of you, but unlike water and sewer and transportation, developers don't have to bring all the electrical infrastructure into the subdivisions. So we do that. That's something, a model that the Duke Energy and the investor-owned utilities have always done. On the water and sewer side and on the road side, we always have the developers build those roads and bring them into us. So given the rate structures and the amount of growth and developments going on and the amount of electrical infrastructure we have to put in, that budget's always tight, and it's tight right now. The water and sewer fund with the big water reclamation facility is also tight, but it's also about $40 million of sewer needs in the southwest quadrant of Clayton, which is unsewered for the most part, that needs to be done, and that was not ever in anybody's master plan either. And so those are some major water and sewer needs outside of even the water reclamation facility. I think most of you also knew that we were denied a permit by Diener DEQ back in the fall when I first came on board. We just lost track and they put a stop to it, so we had to go negotiate more storage capacity. So we do have some challenges with not just our sewer, but we also with our water system within the town. That's my phone going off, so I apologize if they hear it at home. So the general fund is also strapped because we got an $18 million park bond that's going on. And when you look at our normal CIP and projects, there's not a lot of excess money in the CIP for general fund projects either, which includes transportation, buildings of all kinds like the library, police, fire, and whatever. And so the story that I have since Rich was elevated to a deputy town manager back in September was, Rich, somehow we've got to integrate all of this infrastructure that the town can possibly provide to leverage in the best way. And so never before we really integrated it, but we can't really afford, I'll pick on economic development, to have a project over here that needs power and run power down, but we got to run water and sewer over here. We really need to plan our projects where everything kind of comes together at one point, because there's just not enough money to do everything or to spread out too much. And so this plays into the comprehensive plan, because when you look at the land uses and the different kinds of industries and the different kinds of residential growth and the institutional growth, we've really got to figure out a way to maximize our capital investments that we do as a town. And as we talked about in conditional use and public-private partnerships, how we can get developers to build some of that infrastructure up front if they really want to break open a piece of land. And so we're trying to integrate that. We're trying to integrate that across engineering, planning, economic development, the electric utility, the water utilities, parks and rec, just about everything we do as a town to do a better job at integrating. And so that's what we're trying to do there. And that is another reason on the comprehensive plan, there's some things that I don't think everybody in planning was aware we were trying to do on the infrastructure side and the whole CIP side. So instead of having one session for a couple hours back in the fall and then having one more session, I thought we might need a whole day just to go through the master planning that was underway by the different departments. And that's one of the things we'll do with the comp plan. So that's all I have on that, other than questions. If
Yeah,
we take a few. Yep.
Thank you for that update. Yeah, we don't often hear that side in this setting here. I was just curious, is there any kind of timeline on that? You said it's linked to the comprehensive plan. Is there an upcoming date or timeline for any of that?
Yeah, we're putting together our budgets now, and I'm trying to get those budgets to the council earlier this year than in the past. So I hope the council will get those sometime. And they've seen the draft at the planning session. For the first time, we've done that in our retreat, so they got to see a sneak preview many months early than before and where we were, and they have a better understanding on things. And so I will be trying to get them a final budget in April to look at, so about a month away, which will include the CIPs as well.
Right.
We've also had outside consultant since I've been here, re-looking at the electric CIP. We've had Davenport looking at the general fund and Black and Veatch looking at the water and sewer fund. So all these independent rate study, taxation studies, they're all feeding into this budget. So to answer the question, once we get the budget figured out, then we can feed that into the comp plan, and then we'll have a little bit more better picture of what needs to go on down the road.
Thank you.
So, James, you have that look?
Yeah, I got that look. So again, I do a lot of business with the town outside of this room. And one thing that I just wanted to say, plant a seed, I guess, with you. I've seen the town seem to be in a very enforcement, regulatory mode the last few years, and not as much in a public-private partnership mode.
Yep.
One thing that I'm hearing and seeing some is like with the new stormwater ordinance, and if we look at everything inside of a box and say, well, Andrea needs to handle stormwater on her lot, but she's not worried about her neighbor's lot or neighbor down the street or neighbor down the street, is that necessarily the best use of resources? And what I feel like is that we need to look at it on a town-wide basis and, try to spend the money, because we got very little of it, in the best places. So, or do you see that coming up in the future and kind of changing the way staff's thinking and getting out of just a regulatory, this is the rule, comply mode, and getting to more of a visionary, how do we become the town we want to be in 20, 30, 40-year mode?
Yeah, we've got I think one example is we've got a regional pump station that we need out toward Ranch Road. And 3 developers were all getting ready to try to tie back into Little Creek, which is going in the opposite direction of where we need to go. And we need that regional pump station built. And so we really tried to facilitate the developers coming together as a group to throw all their collective money in the pot for that regional pump station. The town could put a little money in the pot, all subject to everybody's needs, but figure out a way to work together to get that regional pump station built so that we just didn't have the one-offs and the enforcement. You can't do this, your money's got to be used this way, because as you know, a couple of you know, that's going to force people to act kind of stovepipe behavior and not work together. And so whether it's stormwater or parking or pump stations or whatever it is, we're hoping to work among developers more to get them to come together and let the town be part of that facilitation process to make things happen. So,
and one thing that I feel, and again, I may disagree or agree with me, I feel like that sometimes I hear stuff out of the council and you as the manager, but I don't necessarily think that staff's necessarily carrying the same baton that you guys are. And I guess challenge you as the manager to where me as a former,
I need another challenge, by the way.
me as a former town councilman and a planning board member and a community activist, I guess you could say, I'd really love to see everybody singing off the same hymn book, and I don't necessarily see that all the time now.
Yeah, I think things are changing without going too much into all that, but I think we all want a couple things out of government, right? Age-old things, 2 things. You want consistency, but you also want flexibility. And I think by the nature of things, staff has got to be the people that enforce the consistency. Not that we all don't, but if there's any flexibility to be had, it comes more at the council level and me trying to work with council to get those messages down. There's no ordinance that are perfect. There's always shades of gray in there. They're intended to be shades of gray sometimes. As the lawyer will tell you, sometimes it's better to be a little gray than black and white. And so I think that's what we want to do, but we want to get the messages down. But certainly we want a can-do attitude more than a you can't do that. And we dealt with one today on a site, industrial site that I can't talk about, but they were like wanting to do something really fast. And it was how can we help you? Here are some solutions. We may not be able to meet your exact schedule, but here's the solutions that you have beyond just rigid enforcement of no, right? So that's what we're trying to do, but point taken. Anybody else?
JD, back on the master plan, I guess, 2 separate documents from the comp plan, but somewhat linked together. Your thoughts on that? I mean, the master plan, obviously, is a different document.
Yeah.
It continuously updated annually, I'm sure, but separate from the comp plan.
It is, and for again, just make sure, because I don't know all of your backgrounds, but, master plans are done a lot of times in an engineering or facility side to say what's going to be the future demands and what's going to be on the system, and then let's develop some projects with how we implement and meet those demands. The comp plan kind of tells you more about where you want to go, right? That's that comprehensive plan, that lookout. With 160D, though, it does get a little bit more prescriptive because it start laying out some boundaries, and people use that for reasons why their projects have to be approved. That's really where we think the integration happens, because if all those departments are doing their little master plans and developing that for the CIP, for the capital improvement program, some of that needs to be tailored into the comp plan, and then part of the comp plan needs to be done there. So that's what we're trying. There's still two different documents, two different processes, but we want, a little bit to James's point, that integrated type approach for everybody to work with people. So. Okay. Can I do one thing while I'm here? I'm going to do COVID real quick before I give it to Jeff, and then I'm going to be quiet. A couple things. Although you didn't know it, you guys have kind of been a guinea pig in a way, because town council and the planning board are only two boards that are regularly meeting face-to-face now. So we're tentatively targeting, we got a plan approved last October. We didn't open up. Other local governments did. We did not. We've basically been closed to the public since March of last year. This $74 million operation we run by the people can't get in the buildings. And so we are now trying to get the buildings back opened up, and we picked May 1 as kind of that jump date. What I want to make sure we do is staff with our signs and our approved plan that the council approved last fall. It's all in place, but it will take us about a month to get everything ready to go. So we're working toward that now. Part of coming back is to bring other boards and commissions back. So we've extended the offer to them to do these kind of live meetings or a hybrid meeting, should they want to. Summer camps, we had this debate a couple of weeks ago, but we will have summer camp this year. There was a lot of hesitation, but then somebody looked on the website and said, the YMCA's already advertised theirs. So, we're not the first ones to do it, but we're going to try it. We're going to be socially distanced more. It's going to cost more because it's going to take more staff from smaller groups, but we're going to try to do our camps and get the kids back to normal. That'll start around the 1st of June. Parks and Rec partially open now. The library will start trying to open back up around April 15th. Again, they were kind of open into the fall by appointment, but they'll try to soft open. And as soon as we get our parking lot project finished, which would be my May 1st, we will tentatively set that for kind of a town deal. Again, we need to be socially distanced. We need to do extra cleaning. We're going to do all those things and comply with the governor's order. But I just want to let you guys know from a planning perspective, we are trying to get back to business. I can also tell you that the public was wanting us to get the track open back up in the mornings for walking and stuff. The public has been calling, wanting to have church service and civic groups back in this building. And they're pushing us not to wait till May 1, but we're going to wait. We're going to be a little conservative with that. And the special events, people are now wanting to come out and do all kind of special events now in the community on our roads and everything. So we're really seeing that starting to tick up in the last few weeks. So we're going to watch, we're going to be careful, but from a planning perspective, we're going to plan to try to jump May 1 if we can. So any questions on that for me? Good? Okay.
Thank you for the updates.
Well, hopefully I earned my money tonight from you guys. A couple of updates.
Very helpful. And you spoke into your microphone. Looks like the last item on our agenda is 5E, upcoming projects.
Thank you, Jeff Keynes, planner, for the record. And this won't take long. I just wanted to give everyone kind of what's going to happen in the future. I did allude to one of them when I mentioned the lofts rezone. That's going to be heard is one of the projects coming up at the end of April. Hopefully we can take care of that for a recommendation for a rezone for it to move forward to a final decision by the town council. As you remember, there was a variance associated with that. That will not be heard by this board. It's going to be heard by the Board of Adjustments. But with the 160D, we have received, obviously, 160D has passed. Applications have continued to come in under the new 160D code. So the only one I can really talk about at this point, this under technical review committee, is a project called Country Lane. It's going to be a conditional zoning project. So it takes the place of the plan unit development type of development. So it's going to be our first time running through this for staff and for the board and for the applicant as well. So it's going to be a large residential project that's going to have a lot of area into open space. So we're just received it a couple weeks ago, so it's still under the review by staff. So I don't have too many details to share at this point in time, but probably in the next month or so, once things get moving forward and it's approved by the Technical Review Committee, TRC, it will be moving on to a public hearing for a recommendation from this board, and then it will be moved on to the town council. So I'm sure there's more to come. We have been getting queries about other projects, but nothing solidified yet. So if I talk about them, which obviously I'm not going to, it would just be in speculation. And to be honest with you, after all, I get 10 phone calls, maybe one of them is a follow through to the next step. So I don't count on anything until it's been submitted by the first of the month, and they plunk some money down and submit some plans. They got some skin in the game, therefore we'll move forward with it. So under that, the next big one would be, again, Country Lane. It's going to be an interesting project. So I look forward to working with everybody on that project and working with you guys as well. So with that, I don't think nothing we can really report at this time, unless someone comes in with a application that they want to do permit choice, which we don't know at this point. So if you hear any projects, let us know. We're open for business. So questions?
Any questions for staff, Mr. Lipscomb?
Jeff?
Yes, sir.
I don't know if this is for you or for JD, but I think that the last time we received a new application update that Haley used to do pretty regularly was back in November. I didn't know if y'all were planning on continuing to do that in the future, if y'all talk about that.
We haven't spoken directly on that, but just to go down to the general, here's what we've done for January, February, March for new application submittal. Something like that. Here's what, yeah. So if you're wondering, here's here's the applications that have been turned in for review for January, and at the end of the month, if there's a board meeting, which it sounds like they're going to be more frequent, then we can say, we received 3 applications, here's the name of them, sure, not a problem. Or even if we want to go so far as, here's an application that was submitted in November, they finally come back in January for a second round of reviews. That's a pretty easy list to put together. And then if anyone has any questions on details, we'd be more than happy to answer them. If we can't answer them at the meeting, we can just email you, give us a call during the day. That's fine, yeah. It's pretty straightforward.
Thank you. Any other questions?
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Looks like we are down to informal discussion and public comment. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to speak at this time? If not, I can entertain a motion to adjourn the meeting.
So moved.
Motion to adjourn by Board Member Lipscomb. Is there a second? Second by Board Member Bizzle. I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Did I get that right, hopefully? Okay. It's hard to tell with the masks. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. Motion carries. Meeting adjourned.